across to Berlin and speak to our correspondent, Nick Spicer. Hello to you, Nick. Before he went out and spoke to lawmakers, we were discussing how this is a big speech for Olaf Scholz. What were some of the highlights there?
This was really a speech for the history books. It's a 180-degree turn in German foreign policy. I'm just going to drill down on some of the things that really impressed me. Well, first of all, standing ovations, multiple standing ovations. There were no parts of the National Assembly that were not applauding. As far as I could see, pretty much everything he said. He said, first of all, we must show strength and defend freedom and democracy and security. And we all have these stories from our parents and grandparents whereby we can't get involved in war because of Germany's Nazi past, and that Germany has basically a responsibility to not foment any kind of conflict. He said today that that foreign policy has been naive, to use a word from the end of his speech, and that diplomacy is always an option, but we must do new things. He said that Germany was going to send weapons to Ukraine. This was announced in a tweet last night after a meeting with the coalition partners. Some of the things that are involved are 1,000 anti-tank missiles, 500 ground-to-air missiles, Stingers, to shoot down those Russian aircraft that are shooting rockets into civilian buildings, among other targets. He said that this was not Russia's war. This was Putin's war, and a big standing ovation, over 20 seconds I counted, when he said, let's not forget that there are protests against this war across Russia, and that the people who are protesting across Russia face violence and imprisonment and all kinds of problems for their standing up against the war. Big standing ovation there. He moved on to thank the German soldiers who were in a state of readiness in Romania and Slovenia and in the German Navy in the Baltic Sea. But he said this, and this was another historical turnaround. We're going to spend a lot more money, 100 billion euros extra. We're going to hit that famous 2% spending target that NATO members have. And what's more, if we're going to actually put this in the Constitution. This spending is not something that's going to be voted on every year. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but that's a headline. That's really big. It's a change in Germany's foreign policy. And then, as you were saying, well, the energy mix. We know that from the weeks we've been talking about this conflict, that Nord Stream 2 pipeline, Germany being heavily dependent on Russian gas imports. Well, he said, listen, German citizens, I know you're worried. There will be help for the poorest among you. Gas prices will go up. We'll work harder on changing the energy mix. We're going to work on importing liquid natural gas from the United States, from Qatar, from other countries, and building a network. We're going to end that dependency, that addiction that's basically going back to the 1980s, to the Cold War. And then finally, he said, listen, and this was really the standout summary for me. Our own history has said that we must not accept violence as policy. And now there's violence coming from Russia, and it's unacceptable, and it's Germany's time to act.
Indeed. Thank you, Nick. Nick Spicer reporting from Berlin.